Hello, welcome to this video in which each episode a special guest will share with me their top 5 games of all time. My name is Arturo. You can find me on Twitter as at Arturo Nereu. And today I have a celebrity from the XR world. Someone that I'm really happy to call my friend and who I spend a lot of time working with, playing, talking, practicing yoga, etc. So today we have Dan Miller. How are you, Dan?
I'm doing well. Quite the introduction there.
Yeah, and I mean every word of it. So yeah. First I would like you to tell us a bit about what did you do, where do you work at, those things.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Dan Miller. I work at Unity Technologies. I'm on the evangelism team with Arturo. And on the evangelism team, I focus on AR and VR or XR, as we kind of lump it under the umbrella there. And in that role, I do a lot of content and demo development, give presentations, things like that.
Awesome, awesome. All right, where are you based at? Well, I know
I'm
that,
based
but
I'm based in the San Francisco Bay Area in California in the United States.
okay, nice. Actually, City 17, is that based on any real city in the world?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I mean, I know, obviously Valve software is up in the Seattle Bellevue area, but
Yeah. Yeah, just curious. Sorry for deviating. So, well, that's done. I know that you've done game development in the past, as you mentioned. You have also been working as an evangelist with the rest of the team. One thing that I want to ask you if you remember when we met for the first time.
I want to say it was at a Unity user group at Zynga, and it was before I joined the team here in San Francisco,
Okay.
and I think the entire team was in town. Just everyone was giving a presentation. Um, and I think I approached you afterwards and kind of asked about getting a job. And I think you might have passed me off to Ashley, who's also on our team, who originally was doing more of a coordination role and is now an evangelist as well. But now that I think about it, there was also a San Francisco Developer Day that I went to as well, but I'm not
Uh,
sure if we even met or interacted there.
at the Microsoft Reactor, also in San
Yes.
Francisco.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And that was way before you joined Unity.
At least several months. Yeah, like 6 months plus.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say that we met during the interview process,
Yeah,
but
but clearly we met before then. I'm just a forgettable person.
no. I remember the user group in Zynga. I remember the developer day. Um, yeah, yeah, I thought you were
Just
going
don't
to
remember
say,
me.
no. Now I feel bad. Let's re-record everything. No, I was going to say that we met at the interview, but yeah, I was at both events, so probably we met before. And then the first time that we worked together was at a Google event, if you remember that. I think you just joined
Yeah, it was
the
like my
company.
first ever event, potentially like my second week or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was like one of the most fun and memorable experiences. I still think about it very fondly. I have
It
like
was
a T-shirt that we got from that, and I wear it all the time and think back to then.
yeah, it was pretty cool because they took us to tour around the Google campus there, so it was fun. So yeah, those are the first memories that I have with you, but definitely, and we were talking about these a couple of days ago. In the past year or in the past couple of months, we've strengthened our friendship. I want to think about it that way. So
For sure.
yeah, nice. Okay, so what we came here to talk about games, not necessarily about our story. But first, I want to ask you, what's your story with video games? Like, what was your first console, or why did you decide you wanted to make games?
Yeah. So basically, I kind of grew up playing video games. I was, very fortunate and my parents got my brother and I the original Nintendo Entertainment System. And so growing up, I grew up in the same house, and my father still lives there. And in the basement, we had kind of a larger TV. And I don't even remember how old I was, or when it was, but I remember we got a Nintendo Entertainment System. We got the like Olympic pad thing, and we also got the laser gun for Duck Hunt. So we got like the
Nice.
Super Mario Bros slash Duck Hunt cartridge. And I remember playing that a bunch, and kind of growing up uh, as a young child, I just played a lot of video games and played with my brother a lot. Eventually, my brother stopped playing as much, and I kind of continued on. But really, I grew up really in the kind of Nintendo world, and I love my Nintendo Switch, and I really respect that company and everything they've done. And so, yeah, I just kind of grew up gaming. So Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo, 64, GameCube, yeah, Wii U, now the Switch. So yeah, it's always kind of been such a big part of my life. Game Boys, I loved the Game Boy. We would always go up and like visit my grandparents, and long car rides, and I'd just be playing the Game Boy all the time.
Nice. Do you still keep your old consoles?
Yeah, I do. I keep all my old things. I never sell any of my older consoles or anything like that. So they're actually in a box. We've now boxed up a lot of things and started labeling them. So I think it's just called like Dan Old Video Games in a box in my dad's basement right now. So I still have. I don't know if we still have the NES, but we definitely still have the Super Nintendo and the 64. Um, I want to say the GameCube, but yeah.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I don't keep my old consoles. My way of getting new consoles or new games because well, in the States you have Santa Claus, right? He brings you presents. In Mexico we don't have him. We have the three wise men. I think that's how you call them. And
Yeah.
those guys are the ones that bring us the presents on January. But yeah, every time they will give us the new console to me and my brothers, we would sell the old console to just get new games. Yeah, that was the way. I kind of like feel like I shouldn't have done that, but yeah, that's the way it was. Also, when did you decide I want to make games, or did you program? Is your story one of those stories that you started programming since you were 2 months old or something like that?
I wish. I mean, for a while, I kind of always had that in the back of my mind, like, man, I should have started programming earlier. I would have been so much better, or blah blah blah. But no, really, it's just I loved video games. I played a ton of video games, and my father was actually a huge um, factor in pushing me towards game development. So growing up, huge gamer, played a ton of games, and one of the games we'll talk about, and I don't want to spoil the story yet, but I just played a ton of World of Warcraft, and when it came time, um, where I was near the end of my high school career and looking at attending college, my father actually found a game development program at the same college that my brother was attending. So that was Ohio University. And basically, they had, it was kind of an earlier program, but it was all about making video games. And so, I think my dad kind of said, all right, this guy is playing tons of video games. He's dedicating so much of his life to this. Let's see if he could make some sort of career out of it, or something like that. Um, but then even in college, I wasn't instantly drawn to programming and to development and things like that. So that was kind of a bit of a transition that happened a little bit throughout my college career as well. But
Mhm.
really, it was kind of like, I'd been gaming so much, and then my dad was like, all right, like you gotta, use the skills and knowledge somehow. Or, I think he just realized obviously it was such a big passion of mine. And so there was this opportunity, and I guess the rest is history.
Yeah, no, I like those type of stories as well because me as well. I didn't start programming until I was like probably in the university or a couple of years before that. But then you go and see like John Carmack. He was a programmer since he was like 5 years old or something like that. And I guess, yeah, for people wanting to do this, it's never too late for learning how to code or do these kind of things. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool story. And yeah, I also think that sometimes parents they don't want their kids to just keep playing, but in some cases or in many cases that's also a career path for them, and I think it's what happened with you, it's what happened with me and many other people. So,
Yeah, yeah, I feel really fortunate. My parents were always very supportive. I was probably gaming a little too much. They weren't, they still wanted me to do some other stuff. And I still remember like family dinners where I would like run downstairs, eat as fast as I could, just so I could run back upstairs and keep gaming.
yeah.
But but yeah, really really lucky that they supported me and allowed me to kind of pursue this as a passion and career.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. So yeah, those were my introductory questions. So let's start talking about your top five games of all time. And I actually, I'm not going to spoil your list, but I think this is a pretty solid list of games that are different between them, but I'm pretty sure there's an interesting story behind all of these games, which I don't know about. I don't think we've ever talked about this until we said we were going to do these videos. So tell us a bit about this first game.
Yeah, so the first game is Team Fortress 2. So this was a game that I got introduced to in college. And basically, it was kind of this really interesting game where there was this multiplayer aspect. It kind of had this really interesting world about it, a really kind of nice and friendly art style. And I think it really started a lot of my kind of admiration for Valve and Valve software, where they had this kind of quality bar that was super high, and really as a aspiring game developer, I kind of really saw the ecosystem that they had with the mod tools and just getting different, like, almost like resources or content from the community. So they have this full like workshop, and people would make 3D models and submit them. And one of my classmates actually like made a 3D model and submitted it in, and it got in, and it was just like such a cool thing where a community member could kind of work with their tools that they opened up, and you could create content for this. And then I also just really loved the idea of being able to try out these different classes. I feel like there's a lot of class-based shooters nowadays, or first-person shooter games, and even more coming out still. And Team Fortress 2 to me was always like almost like that unique or foundational game that stemmed a lot of these newer games. You look at things
Mm-hmm.
like Overwatch or Valorant now, and it was just cool to how unique each of the characters were. It's not you're going around and you're just sniping people. I mean, you could do that if you were the sniper, but then they
Yeah.
also had the spy, which was like such a unique character, and you would like disguise as other characters, and then you could backstab them, and then even then they would release these big update packs that would add like new weapons. And for like the sniper, where you used to have a sniper rifle, then you got like a bow and arrow, and it acted completely different, and it was kind of just a whole unique play style. And so it was really cool to see this living game that was continually updated, had this community support and had a really big community behind it, and then continue to have these major updates and kind of unique elements to see the game continue to evolve.
Right, right. I've played Team Fortress 2. I I don't think I've played more than 10 hours, 15 hours. But maybe I'll mention a couple of things about the game. You already mentioned that it was developed by Valve, and also it was published by Valve. The game it was released in 2007, sorry, which is crazy. It's already 13 years old. And I still think that when you go to Steam and you see the top played games, Team Fortress 2 is still there, which is it's crazy. So it's a first person shooter, but correct me if I'm wrong. It's just multiplayer, right? There's no
Yeah.
single
Yeah,
player.
they more recently they've added some aspect, but it's still like a multiplayer experience, but you're just playing against NPCs.
Okay.
But from its core and back in the day, it was just pure multiplayer, team versus team. And they have a couple different game modes like capture the flag, team deathmatch, and things like that. But yeah,
Nice.
just kind of a pure multiplayer game.
So the engine that they use, and I guess we have to talk about game engines as well. It's the Source game engine, which until these days, the engine looks great. Even today, Titanfall 2 uses Source, which is crazy. They look different, but it's crazy that an engine that has been around for so many years still looks so impressive. And I also like the style of Team Fortress 2, like cartoony and how they can go crazy with like explosions and all those things.
Yeah, for me, it's like that was something that really drew me in was that kind of unique art style,
Yeah.
but also, somewhat grounded. Like if you look at the like body proportions of some of the characters and things like that, it's just so distinct and so well done. To me, it's just like there's all these little aspects and these little polish elements and all these things where it really made me start to think about video games in a different sense. And I think also, back in the day, there wasn't as many of what I kind of refer to as these live games
Hmm.
where
Yeah.
you just expect updates. And Team Fortress 2 is free. It came out on consoles as part of this kind of orange box pack and things like
Yeah.
that. But it's really just this live game. They had some really interesting kind of microtransactions again back in the day, and with some of the unique content that they had around hats and different aesthetics that you would have your characters, it created this massive explosion of this like micro economy within the game itself. And I remember I've told my parents, my family, friends about like, oh yeah, there's this one game and you can buy a hat in the game and it's $800. They're like 800 like digital dollars, or it's like no, it's just 800 like US dollars, and it just puts a cool little Viking hat on your head, but it has some cool particle effects on it. It's like there was
Yeah.
this crazy thing to think about these digital items in this real world value. And again, I think that's a more accepted paradigm nowadays. That's like, oh sure, yeah, it's like that's that one rare item in that one cool game. But back then it was crazy. And like they had these unique things where if you played Team Fortress 2 on a Mac computer, because they
Mhm.
ported it to the Mac OS, you would get these earbuds. And it's literally, it's the white earbuds that you
Yeah.
have that, ship with all like iPhones and things like that. And those became so unique and so rare that those were a currency in itself. So you would say, like, oh, I'll trade you that one item for 4 buds. And like and that was just how people traded and distributed items. So I
That's
think that also just like totally blew my mind back in the day.
that's pretty interesting. I didn't know about the hats and all those things. I didn't know about these things that you're mentioning, but about these virtual currencies or these virtual economies, I agree. Like some people, even in the physical world, people when you think about trading card games, Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh and those kind of things, some people might think like, oh, yeah, it's just a card. Why is a card that expensive? And it's similar in the virtual world, right? Although you don't have anything there, but still it's something that you own. So it's pretty interesting, and I think it goes even back from that, like baseball cards or those kind of things that had value, and up until today they have this value because they are rare or just because they have some historical meaning or whatever. So it's definitely very interesting. I have a question for you. Do you think that Team Fortress 2 is more fun than, for instance, Counter Strike? just to play, or the community, or the mechanics?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what I really liked about Team Fortress 2 is it's more of that pick up and play. You still have, I mean, they had competitive leagues and people who played it really competitive back in the day, but
Yeah.
it was never the, let's say, like the seriousness of something like Counter-Strike. So for me, I could just hop on TF2, play, 5 or 6 games, play for a couple hours and just walk away. Where I feel like with Counter Strike, and I did play that a bit as well, you really have to kind of like get serious, really get in the mode. You're communicating a lot, and like obviously there was voice communication with Team Fortress 2. It wasn't as crucial, and you can almost
Hmm.
have these different elements. There's also some of the characters just play well together, so there's certain synergy with like the medic that can heal people and the heavy that has a really big gun and a lot of health.
Yeah.
So there was these interesting dynamics where like some of my friends would just, we'd hop on, we'd be, half of one team and be able to play it a little more casually. So I think that's what also I really enjoyed about it. It was this more kind of pick up and play mentality.
Yeah, and for people not knowing why I'm asking this about Counter Strike is because both games are games by Valve. So that's
Yeah.
what I'm asking in case someone asks, like, why is this random question popping up? And actually, going just back to the things that you mentioned about Team Fortress 2, you mentioned something about the feel, about the aesthetics, and those kind of things. And I believe by working with you, by looking at your projects, these AR projects that you are working on, where you like care a lot about the interaction, about making feels things feel like great, even if those are just like super subtle things, you care a lot about those. I think that Team Fortress 2 actually probably helped you appreciate those things, like explosions and all the bounciness of the characters, even like breaking something, and it has some of these animations. So maybe that
Yeah.
made you.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like it was really one of the games where I was transitioning from a game player or gamer into this game developer, um, and I think that's when I started to look at and appreciate a lot of these things more. And obviously, Valve has the and sets the quality bar so high, and so I think it
Yeah.
was when at that pivotal moment where I'm just like, wow, like the polish and the finesse on every little small aspect of this game is just so high. So yeah, I think it definitely has influenced a lot of my personal developments and stuff.
Awesome, awesome, great. Okay, so let's go to your next game, which is a game that I have to say I've never played. I don't. I'm not a big fan of suffering when I play. I most of the time I want to play because I want to have a good time. As a gamer, when you want to play something just as a game developer to try to see how they did something, that's a different story. But yeah, usually on my free time, I don't enjoy like suffering. So tell us about the, the next game.
Yeah, so the next game is Blood-Borne. So this is one of the titles released by From Software, which has always, traditionally been really challenging video games. And it came out for the PlayStation 4. And yeah, I mean, it's just one of their breakout, titles. And it was really unique in that it was a divergent away from all of the other previous titles in the kind of aesthetic and in the setting. So, previously From Software, known for their Dark Souls games, is this very medieval setting where you're a knight, there's some dragons, things like that. And Bloodborne is really going into more of this kind of gothic setting. And to me, I was just instantly drawn in by a lot of the aesthetics and a lot of the kind of unique elements and things like that. And also just felt like there wasn't a lot of games that had this kind of like um almost like this game in the setting that looked this good. And obviously From Software makes really really high polished, really quality titles. And so it was just such a fun game for me to play and experience.
Is this part of the or sorry, that does Bloodborne takes place in the same like timeline as the Souls thing, or not at all?
I mean, there's like with all games by From Software, there's all these like story elements and little sprinkles here and there, um, where they don't always tell you every single detail. A lot of it's kind of up for interpretation.
Yeah.
My understanding is that there isn't really a connection there at all. There's not really anything related to kind of the Dark Souls or Souls, yeah, universe. But obviously, there is some kind of, you start to see some similar elements. Obviously, it's really challenging. It's really focused around these epic boss battles, which
Mhm.
is another common theme. And then there's also just a lot of really, really interesting level design and exploration. You'll go down one path and kind of circle back around and open up one gate, and then you'll be like back where you started. Like there's a moment where you end up back at like the very first area that you're at, and you're just like, oh my god, like I've just played this game for 20 hours and now I'm at the start, but I have a new thing that could do something else. And so there's a lot of cool aspects like that.
Nice, nice. So you already mentioned that it's developed by From Software. The publisher is Sony, and this is a PlayStation exclusive, right? The genre, at least according to them, because I haven't played it, is an action RPG. But do you think it's more heavy on the action or heavier on the RPG side of things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more on the action. The cool thing about it, so there's RPG elements where you level up your health or your like stamina and things like that. But to me, a lot of the RPG and a lot of the fun comes from your weapons. So there's a bunch of really unique weapons, and
Mhm.
also some of these weapons are just like I've never even seen this in a video game. Like there's this weapon that's like it's like an axe like razor thing, almost like a razor you'd shave your face with, and then you can like fling it out and then it becomes like a longer axe thing, and like it's just this like really really cool and awesome designs. And so you kind of like upgrade those weapons and kind of learn some new stuff with them with like new abilities. um, and so I think it's a little more on the action side, but there's these nice RPG elements that like keep you kind of grinding and keep kind of wanting to get better from there. And yeah, it's just like you're just you go down one path and you're in a brand new immersive environment that just has awesome music, crazy visuals, crazy like monster design. Like some of the bosses are just like you couldn't even I don't even, like where did these ideas come from? Like they're very very unique and very cool.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's also one of the things that I enjoy about games. When you see these monsters, when you see these creatures, um, yeah, you feel like that feeling that you just described. It's great. Like, oh, how did they think about this character or about this puzzle or these kind of things? Like, what were they thinking? And it's super exciting. And also another thing to mention about Bloodborne is that it's using this engine called the Fire Engine with modifications, but it's an engine that is proprietary of PlayStation platforms. So I want to get your take on these console exclusives. For instance, I think they are great because developers can focus on just one platform and squeeze all the power from there. But maybe, well, yeah. What's your take on exclusives?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody really wanted and is still holding out hope that Bloodborne will come to PC. Obviously that opens up a little bit on the mod side,
Hmm.
which isn't, I don't think it's, all of those mods are officially like, uh, they certainly don't get the blessing of like Sony or From Software. People
Yeah.
just do it because they have access to the files. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think this was one of the games that encouraged me to buy a PlayStation 4, and I think uh, some of these exclusives, it's just how the business works sometimes. It's like they're obviously From Software is basically a I guess called like a second party studio or something where they work really closely with these core platforms,
Yeah.
and it shows. Like when Bloodborne came out, it was one of the best looking games on the PlayStation 4. And it was just, they're obviously really pushing a lot of these limits to what's possible with the console and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's all right. obviously the more platforms it comes out on, the more people that can experience it. But I think that's just kind of the way it is sometimes. One of the cool elements that I haven't really touched on yet is that there is some multiplayer aspects available in Bloodborne. So
Okay.
after I'd beaten the game for the first time, my buddy and we basically teamed up, and you can do co-op. And so you kind of progress through the game in a co-op scenario. And when you're in co-op, and like all kind of Dark Souls, or people call them Soulsborne games now, um, there's these light or kind of really interesting online elements. So my buddy and I would be basically playing the game, kind of going through, killing monsters, killing bosses, and then randomly we'd be invaded by just another person who's just going around, and they're just trying to stop us or kill us. And so we'd be fighting, and then you'd hear this little whistle or this bell, like, duh, duh, and then like, this guy has invaded you. And so we'd have to like, oh no, we're like, killing this big monster right now. Now this other guy's behind us, like hacking on us. And um, it was just this really cool, interesting element that added like an additional layer, an additional challenge. And, they have like player versus player and these things. And I
Mhm.
think that added a lot of fun because they almost like randomly spawn in. It's not like they just appear right in front of you. Like they could be behind you, or like you start looking around, you don't really know. Um, and yeah, with that multiplayer playthrough that we did, I chose like a totally different weapon. So I had these like beast claws. So they were almost like these fist claw weapons. And then there were some abilities where I almost like turned into like this werewolf type thing. And like it was just, way different than I had originally played it, but such a fun like playthrough, and then a cool element on top doing that multiplayer, which I thought was pretty cool.
I had no idea there was a multiplayer on Bloodborne, so it's good to know that. And actually, yeah, similar to Team Fortress 2, when you experience something with someone else, either if they are sitting next to you or remotely somewhere else in the world, that changes your experience. That changes the story of your gameplay, and it makes it unique for you in particular. So something similar happened to me. Did you play Journey on PlayStation 3?
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know that that was also an online game. So, you are playing around, and then some other of these characters get close to you, and they start like, I forget the word, like making sounds with like this
Whistling.
whistling and jumping around. And I was like, okay, yeah, this AI apparently is pretty smart or whatever. So at the end of the game, when you beat the game and then you start seeing the credits rolling, you see that, oh, these are like your journey partners or whatever, and you start seeing like crazy names. And I went to the internet and said like, oh, so I was playing with these real people, and the next time I play, that experience is going to be different. And some people told me that they knew this was part of the game. I didn't, so it was a very nice surprise for me to play something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like that is almost, we talked about platform exclusives. Obviously, Journey originally launched on PlayStation and was kind of
Yeah,
exclusive there. And again, I feel like Sony has a bit of a different approach to some of these multiplayer elements, where they have these like, it's not like, let me join a server, all my buddies go together and we do this thing. It's kind of like, oh, you can do multiplayer stuff. It's not, it's not super explicit, or it's not like a core part of all the games. But yeah, I think Journey's another interesting thing where, oh, Sony and some people over there, were able to use their networking and use some kind of interesting mechanics to almost add this additional layer that
yeah.
um, that really takes things to the next level with some of the multiplayer experiences that are possible with video games.
And actually, what you are mentioning about not having to jump into like a lobby and not having to send invites or things like that make the experience feel in particular cases such as Journey, more streamlined. As you're just playing, and these things happen, but it's not like, hey Dan, you want to play Journey? Let's jump and let's do this. So yeah, that's pretty cool. That's one of the my favorite times in gaming, finding those things. And I imagine you have this kind of experiences as well throughout the whole list of games that you've played through your life. Okay, so yeah, let's go to the next game, which is, it's probably, in the previous videos, I was saying that Minecraft, or I believe that either Minecraft or Fortnite are the most important games of the decade, for all the things that they represent. Like they can be played anywhere in any device. There's some crossplay. They took their IP to other places. Everybody knows what Minecraft is. Everybody knows what Fortnite is. But this next game, I believe, if not the most important game ever, it's probably one of the most important games, in my opinion. For everything that it represents. So yeah, tell us about the third game.
Yeah, so the third game is World of Warcraft. And for me, this was, a really pivotal game in my life. It came out and I started playing it right when it came out. So this for me was in late middle school and high school. And really this kind of dominated my entire middle school and high school life. I played it constantly, and I actually ended up meeting like lifelong gamer friends while playing WoW. So I was in a pretty hardcore raiding guild. So this was a collection of players. I think, at one point we were probably over 120 of us, and we basically went through, and the way you had to progress in WoW was you had to get a group of people together and you had to do this coordinated effort through these raid dungeons. And so when I first started out back in people call it Vanilla WoW, and they actually, Blizzard just relaunched Vanilla WoW, which is kind of crazy. It was 40-person raids. So me and 39 other people were all going in these raids. Molten Core is the first one, and it was this collaborated effort. And I was on Ventrilo, with people call it Vent, which is one of the most common kind of lightweight voice chat apps back in the day. I think nowadays everyone just uses Discord, um, but yeah, it was just I was in that. I played that game. I played with some of my friends. The problem, like my real life friends that I knew, the problem is that a lot of those people kind of dropped off, or they just didn't go as hard as I did, I guess. So yeah, I put in hundreds of thousands of hours into that game, and made some kind of lifelong friends that I still game with today, and still kind of chat with. And yeah, it was really interesting because you know um, you do have this kind of you get this friendly and intimate connection with these people that you're gaming with. They rely on you, in these raids, and to do your role or your part in order for the whole team to be successful. And so it really started making me see and realize, like, wow, like the person who is leading this has really good leadership skills, and the person who's communicating and things like that. And I think also in general, and maybe this is good, maybe this is bad, I was kind of a little bit on the younger side.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people I was playing with was a little bit older, but at the end of the day they were friendly and they had really good kind of life advice, where oh man, I don't know, having some girl problems or something. Oh, it's okay, and helped me out. But yeah, I played a ton of World of Warcraft, and it was at that really pivotal part in my life where I was just, getting super into video games, and then my dad kind of saw that, and then the rest, I was able to pursue video game development as a career. So
That's a great story. Yeah, so this game is by Blizzard, published and developed by Blizzard Entertainment. It's also, I don't want to say an old game, but it was released in 2004, which it's 16 years ago, which is most people who play like Fortnite or more modern games were not born when WoW was released. The genre here is it's what it's called an MMORPG, which for people who don't know what this is a massive multiplayer online role playing game, which basically is like an RPG, but that you play in a world that is persistent because things that happen there, even if you're not playing there, they still happen, and you play with a lot of people. You said that it was 40 people.
So those were the classic raids. So I think overall the group we had was around 120. And the cool thing too was they're from all over the world. I actually
Yeah,
there was a lot of people based in Canada, in California, some in like Ecuador and in South America and things like that. And we all just came together. Now we were on the North American servers,
yeah,
and things like that. But yeah, um, it was really fun. And so 40 people would go into these raids, and then as the game progressed, they kind of dropped it down where it was just like 20 people, and different things like that. But yeah, we just all be one big group, kind of working towards this singular goal. We ended up getting like a world first, so like my guild killed a boss before anyone else in the world, which basically means as Blizzard released content, people would be really excited, and we'd like all log in and try to defeat these new kind of bosses or defeat these new raid dungeons. And yeah, we were able to kind of kill one of them before anyone else in the world, and that was like really exciting. And the other thing is too that thinking back, like I was like logging in sometimes to do these at like 10 p.m. at night, as like a 15-year-old kid. And I'd stay up till like 1 or 2 a.m. like trying to do this. And because I think a lot of people were actually located on the West Coast. And so I was in the Eastern Standard Time.
yeah.
Uh, so yeah, that was kind of another interesting element there.
That's pretty exciting. When I hear or when I listen to people getting excited about the games, I get excited because it didn't happen with WoW for me, but in other games, like I kind of feel what you feel when these kind of things happen, which is it's pretty cool. Uh, so I want to touch on a couple of things. One is asking you, the game is 16 years old, and of course it has evolved, and there has been like expansions and all these things, but there's still people who plays. And my question here is, do you think that if someone gets curious about World of Warcraft today, they can still have fun, or the game is so big that it's gonna be overwhelming? And not only for this game, like any other game, when you start playing 6 months after it was released, sometimes you feel like, oh man, I'm lost on all the memes, I'm lost on all the expansions. Everybody is better than me. So what's your take on WoW for that, about that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, for me, I really enjoyed the experience I had. Um, and obviously, Blizzard has continued to support it, and there's still, a massive team behind it. There's still lots of subscribers who play it. Um, and I think really at the end of the day, it's just kind of changed. It's a different game. They lowered the barrier for entry by a lot. I think that was kind of one of the unique aspects that I was really drawn to, that I really enjoyed, was some of these items that I have, you can't get these items unless 39 other people help you out. And, so maybe it was me kind of being a little, I don't know, elitist and things like that. But that was kind of this really cool element. And now, I know there's aspects where you can just group with a random 39 other people, or it's a random 10 people, or things like that. So they've changed a lot of the game. But I think it's for the better. I think it's things look better. They've advanced some of the graphical capabilities. There's more accessibility where you can just get in and go. You can kind of play as an individual and still advance more. So I think it's still interesting. For me personally, I had to kind of put it behind me and move on. It was consuming a lot of my life, but yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting question. I think at the end of the day, it's a different game, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad game. I think there's still some really unique and cool elements. And Blizzard did a cool thing where they unify all your accounts. So
Hmm.
now I actually go on and I play some Hearthstone nowadays. which is a card game set in the Warcraft universe and has a ton of references to World of Warcraft, which was what originally drew it to me, or I was drawn to. And I see some of my friends that I used to play WoW with still playing WoW. So that's kind of a cool factor that I see now.
Yeah, and you just mentioned something that I wanted to ask, which is Hearthstone. This game, this I'm not sure if the correct term is TCG or more like
Yep, trading card game. Yeah,
yeah, which is made with Unity. I guess everybody working at Unity, even if we don't make the engine, it feels great, right? Like knowing that something that had so much impact in your life now is part of that universe is built. It's been built using the stuff that you work at. So that's one thing, and the other thing is that we had the chance of visiting Blizzard. Yeah, we can say that, right? Like we went
I
to
think so.
visit Blizzard, and it's also great. Like how the life changes, and we're fortunate. I think we are very lucky. We're very fortunate
For
of
sure.
having these chances. But it's great saying like, wow, man. We just took a picture here with this statue in the middle of Blizzard's campus. So, yeah, you still play a lot of Hearthstone?
Yeah, I do. And they're continuing to release expansions. It's gotten a little bit, when it started out, a lot of the cards were straight out of WoW. And they even had like funny sayings and memes that you'd
Yeah,
like only that like came from the WoW universe and these little subtext and all that. Now as they release new cards, I'm sure there's still a lot of references to WoW, but it's newer references that I don't really get anymore. But it's
okay,
still fun. I still enjoy it. I play it a lot on my iPad, and things like that. And then there's, for me, I think, and I think this is kind of a theme you'll see a little bit, um, especially in the next game and in this game as well with World of Warcraft, is I just really like these competitive games, and I really like, you know, with Hearthstone, it's just really fun. You're always playing against a real life person. You can play these games super quick,
yeah,
and there's still some interesting mechanics and dynamics that they've continued to evolve and improve on.
awesome, awesome. So that's World of Warcraft. Now the next game, I'm pretty surprised that your next game is not your first game, because when I think of you as a gamer, I think of about this game. Um, you're even like a professional player or semi-pro or something, but at least you go and compete at these tournaments. But yeah, tell us about your second most favorite game.
Yeah, so it's Super Smash Brothers, and I asked Arturo, and we're just gonna say the blanket kind of series as a whole, because it's had a big impact on my life in general. But yeah, I just really love Super Smash Brothers, and I play basically the latest game all the time. And I grew up playing it as well. I talked about my history with Nintendo,
Yeah,
and yeah, so now I play Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. And as Arturo was kind of alluding to, I go to different local tournaments and bigger things like that here in the Bay Area, which is a lot of fun. And yeah, I just love Super Smash Brothers. And I mean, it all kind of, to me, it kind of is this full circle where my like love and admiration for the Nintendo universe kind of comes full circle, which is really cool.
yeah, and I think that's a huge key, at least for me, the fact that you see all these characters in one same game. I recently we were talking about Avengers Endgame, and I was telling Dan that I've seen that movie now 10 times. And it's just exciting to see like these different characters, and I was also recently playing a Marvel versus Capcom Ultimate, and it's the same thing. Like these universes that you love, just being in the same place. It's pretty cool. Now the gameplay is also very fun. You also like the N64 version, right? The original Smash
Yeah.
Bros.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, so basically, we got the cartridge and I was playing a lot. I had a buddy who lived down the street from me, and we were all, always playing it. He had an older brother that was better, so he'd kind of always beat us up with it. And then from there, obviously, Super Smash Bros. Melee, which is still probably the or one of the most active games played competitively. So that's kind of been almost this like preservation throughout history. I played it a bit, similar thing. I played it with my buddy down the street, but it wasn't as impactful for me personally. So I don't really play Melee anymore.
Hmm.
In college, the Super Smash Brothers Brawl came out, so for the Wii, and then I was just playing it with a bunch of my college buddies, and then uh, the next one of that was Super Smash Brothers. People kind of refer to it as four. So this is Super Smash Brothers Wii U and Super Smash Brothers 3DS, and so that one, I've got a really kind of fun story with that. And when I was thinking about all the different Smash Bros, I think Smash Four, or 3DS and Wii U was actually
Yeah.
the most impactful. Um, a lot of people are kind of meh on it, and looking back, its Ultimate is more fun, and I enjoy that a lot more. Um, but with Super Smash Bros. 4, it originally came out on the Nintendo 3DS before it came out on the Wii U, and one of my old coworkers actually got a like early access code to the demo, and somehow I convinced her to give me the code for my 3DS, so I was playing the demo version of it. And then I started going to local tournaments here in the Bay Area, and we were playing on the 3DS. So this was like a Super Smash Brothers 3DS tournament, because I want to say it was something like, the 3DS came out in like August or maybe September, but then the Wii U one didn't come out till like December. There's some like weird lag time between them, but we were playing like tournaments where me with my 3DS would just play against someone else with their 3DS, and I actually ended up like breaking the joystick off my 3DS because I was like playing too hard. But then I actually met the person I now live with, my roommate. I met him playing Super Smash Brothers at these tournaments. So it was time for me to move, and I wanted to move into the city and find a new roommate, and he was thinking of moving, and yeah, now we've been living together for over 4 years now. So
That's pretty cool. That's also how the games entangle with your life, right? Like with some decisions that came because you played this game, and those kind of things. I also remember playing the Smash Bros. 4 on 3DS when I joined Unity. That was almost 6 years ago. I knew I was going to be traveling a lot. I knew I had to buy something, not to go crazy, traveling and all those things. And yeah, I spent quite some time playing the 3DS version. I got the special edition of Smash Bros. The red 3DS, and that was the first 3DS that I ever had. So yeah, I also have good memories of games more of Smash Bros. More on the family side. I remember playing that with my cousins and just having fun back in the era where you could plug in four different controllers. So it was a lot of fun. So a couple of facts about Smash Bros. Is published by Nintendo. And I always knew that there was another company working on actually developing the game. And I remember seeing the HAL Laboratories logo there. But back in that time, I always thought like, oh, this game is says Nintendo, so they make the game. And in my
mm,
child mind, it was like, yeah, it's just Shigeru Miyamoto doing everything. But yeah, it's not the original one actually uh, was developed by HAL Laboratories. The recent ones are developed by Sora and Bandai Namco, still published by Nintendo, but that's something to consider. I didn't. I guess I was not paying attention, but the first one was released in 1999, which is 21 years ago, which is it's crazy. I still think about these games, like at least the N64 one, as if it was a couple of years ago, but it's a whole life ago. The genre here. How would you describe the genre, or what's the genre
Yeah, I
for
mean,
you?
it's, I think in there's, let's say some controversy in the kind of fighting game community. It's more of a kind of like a brawler fighting game. So, you don't have specific like health bar. You
Hmm.
have these percentages, which is kind of unique. And yeah, I mean, for a while, Nintendo and potentially even still, and again, kind of a little controversial that they say it's more of this kind of party game,
Yeah.
where you just get together with your friends and you shouldn't take it too serious, and there's these random elements in it. More recently, and I think with Smash Ultimate, Nintendo has really shifted over and recognized the competitive aspect of it. And so they've added a lot of options to just play one on one. And so when you play it competitively, or when I play it, and really when I play it anytime, I usually use like there's no items. You have a set amount of lives or stock, and you only play on a very few number of stages, because you want to kind of make it this more balanced or fair game. Um, so yeah, I'd say it's almost like a brawler fighter game, but it is really unique. There's not a lot of fighting games that have these sort of elements or this sort of aspect. A lot of them are, while they're in 3D, it's, you're just in this completely 2D. And in Smash Bros as well, you're in this more, 2D environment, or
Hmm.
you'll only really move left, right, up, or down. Um, but there's some different aspects with like in traditional fighting games, bring someone's health bar to zero. In this one, you have to like knock them off the stage, and they die that way.
Yeah.
So it's there's really some unique elements to it that I think is only been like honed or refined over time, which is really cool.
That's actually another thing that I wanted to touch on, which is especially in Ultimate. How many characters are there? Like more than 50 or something like
Yeah, they've just continued. I mean, Ultimate, the whole tagline was everyone's here. So they brought
that?
every single character they've ever had in the game back, and they've even
Yeah.
split some up. So like Pokemon Trainer, or I guess they kind of combine some. So like there used to be just a Charizard character, and now there's a character where you can swap between the different Pokemon. They have this new thing where they basically take a character that's very very similar and modify it slightly. So like Daisy and Peach are two different characters now.
Hmm.
Before it was just more like a costume that
Yeah.
you'd change to, and they have very very slight differences. But yeah, there's like over 50 characters
Yeah,
and expanding more, which is cool.
yeah, yeah, for sure. But the thing is, you mentioned about having like tournaments, official tournaments. I'm not sure if Evo tournaments are accept
Yep,
now.
Evo. Yep, it's in Evo. Yep.
Yeah. So my question here is, how do they balance a game like this? Or maybe it's not balanced at all and it's just like whatever. But anybody that has tried to make a game, usually we fail. And I have to say, like most of the games I've worked on, at least as a game designer, I think I failed at balancing stuff. Like it's fun for the first 5 minutes, but then you add a new item or you change something in your level, and then it's not fun anymore, and it breaks so many things, and I cannot imagine how it is to add a new character and how that screws up the entire experience.
Totally. I mean, in Smash 4, that was actually a big negative element. So, it's 2020 right now. Smash 4 came out, a couple of years ago, and nowadays every game gets these, this downloadable content, these post-release updates. In Smash 4, there was a kind of running joke, which wasn't really a joke, is that all of the DLC characters had this like DLC armor where they were just better. They were faster. They did more damage. They did more knockback. So it was kind of a big factor. And Cloud, like Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII, was introduced as a DLC character, and then he just started dominating all tournaments and became like the best character. And so, there was yeah, I think it's a huge challenge, and I think that's again one of the testaments that makes Ultimate so good is it's balanced really well, and they have so many different characters. The real mastermind behind it, Sakurai, is he actually originally um, created and worked on like Kirby back
Mhm.
in the day, just like the whole Kirby franchise. And there's also a running joke that like any character that Sakurai worked on has like infinite jumps. So if you're familiar, Kirby can like jump 8 times in Smash Bros, where every other character can just jump twice. Um, but he really pays attention, is really closely involved in development. He does a lot of these big announcements. There's like fun things where he's showing off a character and he literally has like two controllers and he's like controlling two characters, showing off these different things. And um but no, I totally agree. I think the balance in any fighting game is always one of the biggest challenges. And Ultimate seems to have really nailed it. They're pushing out some more updates and releasing patch notes a lot more transparently than they have in the past, which I think is really cool. And so I think that's helped it too, as they continue to update it and things.
Nice, nice. Yeah, there's also this joke about Sakurai. He's on his computer. It's more like a meme, and he says like, "That's not how you're supposed to play this game." It's it's super funny, but yeah, I think also Smash Bros is it's one of those things that, well, two things, because other companies with a lot of IPs have tried similar things, but usually the result is not something great. There are like I'm a fan of Nickelodeon characters, and every once in a while they have these karting game with older characters. But usually it's not, and I hate saying this, but it's not like Mario Kart, right? That they did things great in all aspects. It's fun. It's balanced. All these things, and you still have all these amazing characters. And I think Smash Bros. Even if you, such as myself, I don't play competitive, and I just want to have a good time. Just going through like the story mode and seeing that, trying the different characters and seeing like, oh, how is my beloved Charizard fighting with this Mario, or with Cloud, or like Snake in the past. Well,
Yeah.
is Snake back in Ultimate?
Yeah, everybody's here, man.
Shit.
Everybody is back. So Snake is there.
Yeah,
Sonic, like it's Banjo Kazooie just got
yeah,
added.
yeah. That was also
It's
fun. Yeah.
it's really cool.
But yeah, that's Smash Bros. Just a couple of things I wanted to also mention is that they are using a custom engine for the rendering. I tried to do research and I couldn't find like what engine they are using. But they are using for Ultimate the Havoc physics engine, which is pretty interesting. I think like these games are heavy on physics with all these things that you are just mentioned, and also that the different levels they change and they are constantly changing throughout the same match. So it was fun to see that Havoc uses that Smash Bros Ultimate uses Havoc.
Yeah, I mean, there's been some, in the competitive scene, people like break down the hitboxes and do all this stuff, and obviously, just in any fighting game, you need that
Yeah.
kind of, really high precision and twitch and stuff like that.
Yeah, I actually when I was, I don't know, I was a couple of years ago into Evo, just watching, not playing. I saw how some people prepared, and they go like they record themselves and they go frame by frame, and then they say, okay, in this frame it's when you make more damage or whatever, and they optimize their gameplay based on frame rate of their characters. And I never think about that. I just press buttons like the Marvel versus Capcom, the latest one. I'm just pressing buttons around and seeing beautiful colors. But yeah. So now to your favorite game of all time, the number one. I yeah, I think that's also one of those games that many gamers remember fondly, even gamers who were not owners of the console that this game was released on. They respect the IP, they respect the creator, they respect the brand. I've never heard anyone saying like, "Oh no, I think that game is garbage" or anything. It's always one of these games that most people agree that, yeah, it was great. Up until these days, the IP is also strong. So, what's your
Yeah.
number one game?
So my number one game is Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. I think it was again a really impactful game in my childhood. I had Nintendo 64. I got the golden cartridge, the special edition, um, and I just remember getting so enthralled and so um, immersed in the story, in the world, in the characters, in the journey. And it's like, man, I don't know what's going on, but I have to save this princess. I have to go get these stones. I have to go defeat evil. And I think it's just, there was just so many small parts where it's like, oh, it's some of the things I think about too when like designing and building a game. It's like, wow, they just decided to do like a stealth mission when you're going through you're trying to
Yeah.
sneak up and look through the window. It's like, where'd they even think about that? There's not really any, it's like they don't really reuse some of these things. It's just these like unique elements where you're like, wow, that's a lot of work. And they, for me, it's just as a whole, obviously you advance through time and things didn't go the way you wanted. It's just there's lots of different twists and turns, and I just yeah, I mean it's just always been that really really awesome game that I've just treasured and think about, and uh, had so many cool little elements that you don't always see today. You see things like, okay, this is this type of game that just does this, and it's like, well, what about the horse racing mini
Yeah.
game? Or like stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. It's also probably one of the, I have to say, like, largest games that I play, or biggest games that, now in retrospective, the world was not like infinite as today's games, for today's game standards. But back then, I remember like immersing myself in the world and saying like, oh, this is huge. There's everything here. There's a whole world taking place here, and there are these characters that are alive, and all those things. And today is just like, okay, yeah, this is just a mesh, just animating and having a couple of dialogues. But yeah, those the characters as well. The design of the monsters, the design of the one thing that blows my mind is the design of the temples.
Yeah.
It's like you have to do something here that affects something that you have no idea it's somewhere else. It's crazy.
I think too, it's like, as someone, who's developed and worked on games in the past, when you're playing it, you don't understand what goes into some of that complexity or that design. It's just
Yeah.
thinking like, yeah, I can, you put a door here, you put a key here, you defeat this thing over here, and but it's like, I mean, I think it's a bit of a meme nowadays, but like the water temple, and
Yeah.
some of these different elements and how it just works, and you're able to go and do these things. Then and then you got iron boots, so now you can walk on the ground when it's water, or it's like they have all these different items, and then they unlock things that you got this one item, I don't know, 15 hours into the game, and now you can go back and get this one heart piece that you can get now. And yeah, it's like there's so many layers there,
Yeah. Yeah.
that is so cool. And yeah, like you got the Zora, like all the different like races and the Gorons and stuff. And like I still remember like fondly like some of the sound effects, or like um yeah, just all these different aspects of it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the key is what you said, is the different layers, because this game absolutely has a lot of layers. Like, you could, if you're into like music, or you appreciate music more, then the music is great. If you like the puzzles, then the puzzles are the best thing. If you just want to feel free and just ride your horse around, that's also there. There are so many things to do. You can go fishing, you can do so many things. And yeah,
It's
so
and the cool thing is too, it's like, obvious. I mean, some of these things, like let's take, you just mentioned the fishing thing. There's a whole mini game. You have to like catch the biggest fish, and you unlock some things, but it's still better, and more polished than some aspects of some other games. And it's just
yeah.
like, man, like did they just send like, all right, 5 people go and make this thing, and it somehow fits into the larger whole? And then, and I always think, obviously In today's modern world, lots of games are developed with these pre-built engines, but they kind of developed all this stuff, um, from scratch, so to speak, and developed this whole engine and this whole world around it, and it's just really impressive, even in today's standards. With
Yeah.
yeah, like, oh, I'm going to go over Hyrule Field, and then I'm going to go up this big path, and then I'm in a volcano,
Yeah.
but then it's like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
for sure.
it's a game that it was published by Nintendo. It was developed by Nintendo. Also, from your top 5 games, this is the oldest game that you mentioned. Was released in 1998, which is also 22 years ago or something like that. If I'm
Yeah,
right.
1998. So I would have been 9 years old.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I probably I will be 11 years old or something. At that age, solving a game such as Zelda was not trivial. Like it was not easy to know. And in my case, the game was in English, so at 11 years old, I didn't speak English, so I had to go and buy this magazine called Club Nintendo, which had like step-by-step guides on how to beat these games. I have to admit, otherwise at that age I couldn't have finished the game because sometimes I had no idea what to do. Like, oh, there's this character telling you this, but I don't know what this word means. So what is that? And that was the pre-internet era. So for me, it was not easy to go and find a word. But
You were playing on hard mode.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I agree with everything you're saying. I think it's one of those games that also to me it doesn't visually feel old. Like it's 2 decades old, but to me it doesn't feel like, oh, it looks bad, it looks old. It's just like, okay, it still holds up, and it's being a long
Yeah, I
time.
mean, I think especially with, like, you mentioned the music and some of the almost just like some of the ambiance that it has.
Hmm.
I think obviously they were constrained. The Nintendo
Sure.
64 only has, and it was one of the earlier titles in the Nintendo 64 life cycle. Where like they had the expansion pack that came out with like Donkey Kong in later years and gave him a
Yeah.
little more RAM, I think. But I think they really, obviously worked within the constraints and did some magic to really make these kind of unique elements at every, almost like every turn.
Yeah, 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 and yeah, it's something that I like a lot. Then I'm not sure if you play the other games like Ocarina of Majora's Mask
Yep.
and the remaster versions of Zelda, but it's always something that I enjoy. Seeing on the internet when someone's playing these or when someone's talking about Zelda. So it's great. Another thing to consider is that I also did some research and they use the same game engine as Mario 64, which was like a custom game engine.
Wow.
There's this quote on the internet. I'm not sure if it's true or not, that it was heavily modified, and you can see, right, like Mario is less complex than Zelda.
Hmm.
That Miyamoto considers this engine a different engine, but yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
basically using the same foundation as Mario Kart, as yeah, Mario Kart,
Mario
as
64.
Mario 64. Um, so yeah, yeah, I agree with your top one game is something that it's great. The characters are also like the design of the characters is great. The design of the bosses is great. All the faces of these bosses are great. Some of them are creepy, like at the time as a child you will be like creeped out by this like this witch or this guy with the playing like the drums and
Yeah,
without
like
like a
I
body.
the first time I went like under the well, I still remember it being like spooked out with those, like, the characters that would like jump on your back, or those like weird, like, yeah.
and
Right.
and there was not even like real time lighting or these complex effects, but still, yeah, you could feel immersed there. So yeah, pretty cool game. So we we just covered your entire list of top 5 games. I have to say that I played. Well, I played 4 out of the 5 games that you mentioned, but I think I played and enjoyed 2 of these 5 games. So there's this connection between you and myself, and yeah, let's keep talking about these games that we share in common that we've played. But I want to thank you, Dan, for taking the time, opening up your heart, your gaming heart, uh, and yeah, thank you very much. Do you want to share your social networks, or where can people
Sure.
get in touch with you?
Yeah. First, I want to say, thanks a lot for having me. This was super fun, and it's also just really nostalgic and makes me excited to kind of relearn or rethink about some of these memories that
Yeah,
almost like shaped me so much. And so it was, yeah, tons of fun chatting.
thank you.
I'm basically on the internet. You can find me at Dan Miller Dev. I'm really active on Twitter, and I've now started to secure Dan Miller Dev on lots of different platforms. So on GitHub, my portfolio site, stuff like that. So find me
Yeah,
on the internet at Dan Miller Dev,
okay.
DEV.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to learn about the XR world, Dan is the person. So get in touch with him. Thank you again, Dan. Thank you. As I've told you when we are not recording or anything, thank you for your friendship. Thank you for your time. I really that's one of the things that I appreciate more or the most about working at Unity, or these things like the friendships I have with people such as you. So I'm a big fan of what you do. You're a great person. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. See you.
Thank you.